is called World War III.
The prospect of nuclear conflict is now back within the realm of possibility.
A new and urgent climate report.
A necklace of human suffering.
Almost inevitable that the Earth will surpass the critical threshold of 1.
Unlike the dinosaurs, who most likely didn't know what hit them when an asteroid hit the Earth, and in any case weren't able to do anything about it and suffered extinction for it. And unlike the few people in last year's fictional allegorical movie Don't Look Up, in which the Earth is once again hit by an asteroid,
we're trying to tell you that the entire planet is about to be destroyed.
I say we sit tight and assess.
Sit tight and assess.
Sit tight and assess?
You want us to sit tight.
And then assess.
And President Meryl Streep is able to escape on a spaceship, sparing her and the other evil politicians, thereby avoiding, for a moment, the dinosaurs' unhappy fate. We are facing today's real-world existential crises. But humanity does have a way out of this killing madness, a way to get off the road to potential extinction. But the hour is late, and that road needs to be taken now. The good news is that there is a roadmap to guide us out of this impending terrible future. But there is work to do to prepare for this journey, a journey that could be the most crucial in history. This is the subject and the theme of today's the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. My name is Andy Z, and I am the host of the show, and I want to welcome you to this, the 97th episode of the RNL Show on April 14th, 2022. I am coming to you from Los Angeles, California. 16 days from when this episode premieres will be May 1st, 2022. When we will be marching and rallying to shake up and wake up the people, sending a message to the world. No U.S.-NATO war with Russia. No World War III. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized now for a real revolution. There really are existential crises confronting humanity. And there is a way, there is a road forward through these crises to come out the other side with a future worth living and fighting for. This is not an easy road. It's full of twists and turns and rocks and potholes, exit ramps that appear to be shortcuts that dead end or worse. This roadmap is for a real revolution in this country, the most powerful and destructive in world history, as its foundation lies in the genocide of the native people and in slavery, and in its perpetual brutal wars of conquest for empire, and in its exploitation and rape of the planet itself for its humongous military machine and its consumer society that has done more to poison the earth than any other nation. The roadmap has been charted by the revolutionary thinker and leader Bob Avakian, B.A., in his work, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, Profound Crisis, Deepening Divisions, and the Looming Possibility of Civil War, and the Revolution that is urgently needed, a necessary foundation, a basic roadmap for this revolution. Based on this work, today's RNL show is going to bring to you a scientific understanding that the problems we face are rooted in the system of capitalism imperialism, which is the economic foundation of how this and every other country in the world functions today. We will show how some of this gives rise to the terrible future that looms, and we will begin to dig into why revolution is the solution, why it's possible, and how we can go to work now to make it real. Today's show will begin with the commentary where I will speak to a question that often comes up. And that will lead to an interview with two regular contributors to the RNL Show, Noche Diaz and Lenny Wolff, about May 1st, 2022. And then we will have a video report on the beautiful, militant protests on April 9th that were vibrantly alive with youth organized by Rise Up for Abortion Rights. This will be followed by a brief report on the international climate strike on April 6th by scientists worldwide. But before we turn to these segments, now this.
4 words for liberals who love America, and some basic questions, by Bob Avakian. These 4 words are postcards of the lynchings. If you don't know, find out. Don't look away or make excuses. Answer these basic questions. When was this country ever a great democracy and shining light of freedom? During the long period of slavery? During the 100 years after that of lynching? And postcards of the lynchings? Or now? Since the 1960s, more black people killed by police than all those lynched in the 100 years before. When will you face the truth?
That was 4 words, a challenge from Bob Avakian, and you can find that and more on our website, revcom.us. But in this commentary, I want to return to where I began today's show, to the fact that we are not potentially facing extinction like the dinosaurs, unaware of what could come, or without a way to wrench a different and positive future out of great horror. The solution is a real revolution. That's not playing around with a few changes that leaves the system in place and in power. Or even more pitiful, looking for your place in this setup while telling yourself and others that you are empowering yourself, occupying positions within what are killing confines of empire, and then thinking and boasting that this is keeping it real. A real revolution involves millions of people from all parts of society organized for an all-out fight to overthrow the system of capitalism, imperialism, and moving forward then to replace it with a different system. A socialist system based on the liberating vision and blueprint in the Constitution for a new socialist republic in North America that is authored by Bob Avakian. Look, big changes are afoot. There really are existential crises, situations that could lead to the end of human life, at least as we have known it, whether from the war in Ukraine or the destruction of the environment or both. At the same time, because this system is in big trouble, the history and present reality of the brutal systemic white supremacy in this country, founded in the genocide of the native people and slavery of black people, the patriarchal oppression of women and differently gendered people, and the demonization of immigrants and refugees, all of these crimes and outrages of this system have been intensified to a state where what any rational, decent person should regard as utterly inhumane and intolerable. That is, if they aren't blinded and deluded by the mind-fucking culture and the goodies of distraction that numb the conscience. Yet, in the face of all this, because this system is in real trouble, this is one of those rare times a situation exists where revolution in this country could be possible. The major work, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating from Bob Avakian that I spoke of, digs in to why this is so. I want to let Bob Avakian speak to what is a big question that people have. How could the kind of revolution that involves millions of people really be possible when so few are standing up right now? People also ask this about how is it possible that Rise Up for Abortion Rights is going to mobilize millions of people to rise up now in the next few weeks, the next months, to save the right to abortion. The first thing to understand about this is how radically and rapidly things are and can change. One day women have the right to abortion. The next day they don't. One day students and people are sitting in cafes and going to parties in Kyiv, Ukraine. And the next, bombs are falling and their whole world is turned upside down. One day there is an election for president. Biden is legitimately declared the winner. 2 months later, there is an assault on the Capitol and an almost successful attempt to have Congress set in motion overturning the results of the election. And should they have succeeded, we would have been well on our way to the consolidation of a fascist America. So listen to Bob Avakian from Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating.
And as the normal way society has been ruled is failing to hold things together, and society is increasingly being ripped apart, this can shake people's belief that the way things have always been is the only way things can be. It can make people more open to questioning. In a real sense, it can force people to question the way things have been and whether they have to stay that way. And this is all the more likely to happen if the revolutionary forces are out among the people, shining a light on the deeper reality of what is happening and why, and bringing out that there is an alternative to living this way.
This understanding of how, when what has held society together unravels, it can compel people to ask whether things really have to be the way they are. This insight from BA runs through today's RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. And we hope that today's show will provoke and inspire you to join with the RevComs who are going out among the people, shaking and waking them up to that deeper reality, and doing so through word and through deed. And together we will forge a way for you to become a part of and grow the organized forces to ultimately lead millions of people to flip the tide of history from one of tremendous suffering, if not extinction, to a truly emancipating future. What could be more uplifting, more inspiring, more, yes, filled with the joy of fighting to lift this tremendous weight from humanity? So let this begin with your watching, spreading, and then discussing today's show. Then go to revcom.us and read Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, and get into BA and the other sharp articles that are on our website, revcom.us, every week. One final point. I want to say especially to all the high school and college youth, as well as to all who are watching the RNL show for the first time. As the enormity of the situation we face hits you, and as you begin to see and confront the gap between what you are recognizing needs to be done and the situation today where most people, even your friends, are mainly just going along, while the world and the lives of millions of people hang in the balance. It's painful, it's vexing, but think about and act on the words that you just heard from Bob Avakian. There are storms coming. If we, all of you together with and as part of the RevComs, get out there now, speaking and acting in really creative and bold, determined ways, we will compel people to hear the truth that we need a real revolution for a whole new world. And recognize, too, that there are huge numbers of people right now who need to be reached, and who can be reached, and who can be moved through what we do. And then, in this rapidly changing and sharpening situation, as the revolution becomes a real force, more and more people will see the possibility of a different future and be moved to join with the revolution. So, on May 1st, and between now and then, and going forward with the ferocious joy of fighting for the emancipation of humanity, and in defiance of all the naysayers, all who seek to bury their heads in the sand, all look to find a way to adjust to injustice while scarfing up what they can while the people on the planet hurtle towards disaster, all who play the dangerous fool, cheerleading and egging on the U.S. and its NATO bloc as they ramp up their threats and gear up their instruments of war against their rival imperials in Russia, potentially setting a course towards the Third World War, in defiance of all that. Not swayed by what's popular right now, but clear-eyed. We must speak and act together for the liberation of people everywhere. We will stand up in the face of those who rule this empire of exploitation and oppression, who are dragging the earth and humanity towards extinction, declaring to one and all that we don't accept their future. That we are determined that it's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. Once again, this is the RNL Revolution Nothing Less Show, the lifeline on the internet to a radically new and far better world. And now to Noche Diaz and Lenny Wolff speaking about Revolutionary Internationalist May 1st.
Everyone who can't stand this world the way it is, who is sick and tired of so many people being treated as less than human, who knows that the claim of liberty and justice for all is a cruel lie, who is righteously enraged that injustice and inequality go on and on and on, despite false promises and honeyed words from people in power or those seeking power. Everyone who agonizes about where things are headed and the fact that to be young now means being denied a decent future or any future at all. Everyone who has ever dreamed about something much better or even wondered whether that is possible. Everyone who hungers for a world without oppression, exploitation, poverty, and destruction of the environment. Everyone who has the heart to fight for something that is really worth fighting for. You need to be part of this revolution.
Hi, I'm Lenny Wolff. I'm an advocate for the new communism and a follower of Bob Avakian, and that was Bob Avakian, drawing from a declaration, a call to get organized for a real revolution. If you heard yourself in what he said, then you need to know about and be part of May 1st this year. May 1st is the Revolutionary Internationalist holiday that people all over the world celebrate, marking it with struggle to bring into being the emancipated world that humanity cries out for ever more urgently through revolution. This year, the RevComs have called for celebrations in Los Angeles and New York, and they have raised these slogans: No U.S.-NATO war with Russia. No World War III. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for a real revolution. Today, I'm going to talk with Noche Diaz, national spokesperson for the Revolution Clubs, about their plans for May 1st, the Revolutionary Internationalist holiday. So Noche, welcome to the Revolution Nothing Less Show.
Thanks, Lenny.
So Noche, walk us through these slogans.
Well, to start with the first two parts of this, no U.S.-NATO war with Russia, no World War III. This is very important and different from what people are getting whipped up around to demand right now. Yes, there is a very destructive and heartbreaking scene developing in Ukraine with Russia's unjust and illegal invasion. But people are being whipped up to support things like the no-fly zone over Ukraine, which would involve U.S. more directly becoming involved militarily and having to shoot down anything that flies over Ukraine airspace. People are in the media and the press are recklessly talking about the U.S.'s history of assassinations and orchestrating coups d'etats in countries all over the world, as if those are positive examples of what we should be encouraging and demanding from the U.S. now. This is all dangerous in its own right, and it's part of people in this country being trained to think in really putrid and disgusting ways to support the U.S. in its attempts to more fully dominate the world militarily, politically, and economically. So it's very important that we're raising these demands to set different terms and to get people thinking in the ways they need to by saying no U.S.-NATO war with Russia, no World War III.
Well, isn't it a little extreme to say that World War III might happen?
No. People need to remember NATO is a military alliance. And it is one that the U.S. has used before to flare up conflicts and to carry out invasions and regime changes. And this escalation of involvement and rivalry between U.S. NATO on the one hand and Russia on the other hand involves military alliances that require countries throughout Europe to declare war when different treaties are violated or agreements are come to. This is actually what we're talking about. And this is part of why the U.S. is using this situation in order to ramp up more support. But they don't have control over everything. And as this escalates and, like gangsters on the street, when you huff and you puff, you can't back down. And you don't know where that ends up, except that it ends up with a lot of destruction going down.
I think that's really true. And when you're talking about not just gangsters on the street, but two powers that between them have well over 10,000 nuclear weapons and warfighting doctrines that are designed to use those weapons, it's a very dangerous situation. Talk a little bit about this third slogan in light of that. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct.
This is a very important part of this slogan. People are concerned about the possibility of nuclear war coming out of this situation in Ukraine. Rightly so. I've had family members calling me up and saying, "Oh, is this where this is going?" And people are dreading that possibility. But the fact is that there is a system underneath all of this, right? Of capitalism, imperialism. This is why these empires have to, go at each other this way and compete in this way and claim their right to dominate the world in this kind of a way. And any system that runs the world in that way, any system that gambles with the future of humanity, either through potential of nuclear annihilation or the way in which the environment is being destroyed and could be further destroyed with the outbreak of the use of nuclear weapons, that's a system that needs to go extinct, okay? And it's irresponsible and ridiculous that too many people in this country are edging this on in a way, this conflict between U.S., NATO on the one hand and Russia on the other hand, egging this on in a way that could spill over into that kind of a global conflict that could actually spell that kind of an extinction for humanity.
Well, I think the way you pointed to the system is very important, and it's going to be a very important thing to really bring home to people as the Revolution Clubs, the National Revolution Tour, which I'm on, go out there and try to win people and struggle with people to see things more scientifically, to see what's really going on. But this leads me to a question that I think we're probably going to run into. Why shouldn't you demand that Russia get out of Ukraine? Didn't they fired the first shot after all?
The war that's now erupted in Ukraine is the result of conflict and rivalry between U.S., NATO, and Russia that goes back years and decades, okay? Including the U.S. has carried out interventions and destabilization and sanctions against Ukraine in order to get government that's more favorable and supportive to it. And now that the U.S. is doing what now that Russia is doing what the U.S. claims the right to do all over the world, now the U.S. is drumming up opposition to it. But something from Bob Avakian that's very important that I want to read right here, right now, because it cuts through a lot of this and gets to the clarity of what we need to, how we need to understand this. He says that what is called for, and urgently now, is to oppose all imperialist marauders and mass murderers and all systems and relations of oppression and exploitation, while giving particular emphasis to opposing our own imperialist oppressors, who commit their monstrous crimes in our name and seek to rally us to support them on the basis of a grotesque American chauvinism, which we must firmly reject and fiercely struggle against. And just to put another, underline in that last part, people in this country do not know how much their entire lives and existence rests on the U.S.'s ability to get away with claiming it's the good guys going out there in the world, carrying out not only acts of aggression, but tremendous exploitation of people everywhere, which is the basis of the existence of a lot of space and room for people in this country to not know about what the U.S. is doing around the world. And we need to reject that and call on people who have no stake in that to be part of fighting to put an end to this empire.
I really want to agree with that. And I want to also say we need to bring home to people what this country has done all over the world, from Vietnam to El Salvador, from Iraq to Guatemala, from Iran to wherever. This country has wreaked havoc. This system has wreaked havoc on hundreds of millions of people, and it needs to be ended. I want to, in the brief time we have left, talk a little bit about this second slogan, and maybe we'll talk more on it in a future show, because it's very important. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for a real revolution. What does it mean to get organized for a real revolution?
Well, in terms of getting organized, that part, for everybody, even brand new people who are just watching this now, three things. Right now, what you're doing, watching the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is a very important part of how people can get organized for revolution. You can do this every week. There are RNL circles that meet on Zoom or in real life to watch the show together and discuss what the show gets into in terms of why a revolution is necessary, what it involves, and what it's aiming for. This is how people learn about and take part in the revolution right from the get. So what you're doing now, don't just keep on doing it, but bring others together to do it with you. 2, everybody can be part of raising funds. Okay, either if you bake or cook, you can do some kind of sale. You can spread the word about the upcoming national fundraising live stream that is happening on April 24th, right here on this channel. This is an important way that people can learn about the revolution, what it's about and what it's doing in the world and how they can be part of supporting it. It's a way people can support it, but also even learn about it. Even, this is way a lot of people even first find out, there's people who are doing something together that's not just about themselves or just selling something on the corner to raise money for whatever it is. They're doing something that's about getting to a whole different world. And then 3 is what we've been talking about. Get these slogans everywhere. If you're near LA or New York, make plans to get there on May 1st in the demonstrations, rallies, and marches that are being held. In the time building up to that, spread the word and organize other people to come with you. And again, get these slogans up on walls, on posters, banners, in your social media feed, and in different ways. Plant this different pole out there, set these different terms that are concentrated in this slogan.
And what about the Revolution Club? How should people understand that? Should they be aspiring to get into it? What does it take?
Yeah, so look, for everybody, while you're doing this, while you're taking part in the revolution in beginning ways, while you're learning more about this, look at these points of attention for the revolution. As you're learning more, think about what kind of people are we going to be and what kind of world are we fighting for? Think about the principles, goals, and methods concentrated in these points of attention. And when you come to understand them, make a decision. Is this actually what you want to be part of? And join the Revolution Club if you agree with those points of attention. Because there needs to be people who are taking responsibility to fight for what's concentrated here. And that's what it means to join the Revolution Club. You work together with others who are like you and who are very different from you, but who are all part of what we call fighting the power and transforming people to get ready for revolution and spreading what humanity needs, all right? Not what's good for us or just an alternate lifestyle, but what humanity needs, which is revolution and this new communism that's been developed by Bob Avakian.
Noche, I think we've covered some ground today. I know we'll be back to cover more in the future. I have one more thing I want you to respond to. In a minute, we're going to play a clip from a talk by Bob Avakian, actually an extremely important and an extremely timely talk. Something terrible or something truly emancipating. I want to play an important clip from that talk, and I want to hear your response and how May 1st relates to that.
Everything depends on bringing forward a revolutionary people from among the most bitterly oppressed and all parts of society, first in the thousands and then in the millions. As a powerful revolutionary force, organized from the start and consistently with a countrywide perspective, impacting all of society and changing the terms of how masses of people see things and how every institution has to respond. Everything must be focused now on actually bringing forward and organizing this revolutionary force.
So, Noche, what does May 1st have to do with what BA has just spoken to?
Yeah, so what he just spoke about is, what's going to be required in this situation of deep crisis to actually have a future that's truly emancipating instead of a future that is truly terrible. Think about what it will mean on May 1st to have a force that is out there setting different terms in society, like what's represented in these slogans, not going along with siding with our imperialist oppressors, but opposing them as part of refusing to accept their future and getting organized for a revolution. Think about what it means to all the people who don't know anything about this country, its history, or its role in the world, who will be learning about it because they'll see people who are calling it out. Think about what it will mean for people who have no hope, who see the outrages in society, yearn for something different, but have told themselves there's nothing we can do. Think about what it will mean for people to see you out there in the streets marching on May 1st, actually living it, living for something different, living for something emancipating, becoming part of and representing a force that can really make a revolution to get to this different future. And think about what it will mean for the people of the world to see people in this country, yes, this country, working for this kind of a revolution here.
Next up, we have a video report on Rise Up for Abortion Rights April 9th protests. It's going to be hosted by our crew member, Pete on the Street. But before we go to his report, I just want to say, to those of you who watch our show every week, you might be saying, where's your co-host, Sansara Taylor? Well, Sansara Taylor is an organizer of Rise Up for Abortion Rights, and they are busy this week planning the next stage of struggle to stop the Supreme Court from stripping away the right of women to abortion. So with that, let's go to Pete.
Abortion on demand without apology. Aborta solicitud y sin pedir disculpas. Aborta solicitud y sin pedir disculpas. Because we value life, abortion is a right. Don't be fooled by those fascists, religious extremists who claim to value life but want to undermine women and make us and reduce us to baby-making machines. Our choice! Our choice! Our choice! Our choice! Our body! Our body!
Why are you putting the man down? For abortion on demand without apology.
Activists nationwide and right here in Southern California gathering to speak out for abortion rights.
CBS 2's Michelle Geely shows us one of the biggest local rallies that took place today.
Women and men passionate about choice and abortion rights marched up Hollywood Boulevard Saturday afternoon.
What if here is where the line
is drawn.
The group Rise Up for Abortion Rights held protests in several cities across the nation, including LA. They set up in the heart of Hollywood to spread the word about what they call the erosion of reproductive rights and potential criminalization of abortion in many states.
It's actually shocking because I'm from Mexico, so we kind of see the United States as a more progressive society, especially California.
All eyes are on an upcoming Supreme Court ruling regarding abortion. Mississippi passed a law prohibiting abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. A court ruled it was unconstitutional. An appeal is now before the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court is currently deliberating on a case, Dobbs v. Jackson, in which they were explicitly asked to overturn Roe versus Wade. This decision is about to come down in either late May or early June.
Hey, this is Pete on the street. I'm with the RNL, the Revolutionary Show. What you just saw was footage from protests for abortion rights on April 9th in LA and New York City. This was a taste of the rage, joy, defiance, and determination of people who took to the streets in 12 cities nationwide as part of protests called by riseupfораbortionrights.org.
Be free. Stand up, fight back. When abortion rights are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. Our bodies, our lives, our right to decide.
The message of these protests was clear. The U.S. Supreme Court is poised to take away women's right to abortion this spring. Only the people can stop this. What really stood out about these protests was the youth, who were filled with a lot of fury, heart, and substance, full of passion and certitude, struggling for others to act. We want to show you some of what they had to say, as well as the voices of other leaders in this movement.
My name is Bayla Kraus. I'm a student and youth organizer with Rise Up for Abortion Rights. I am 15 years old, and I am furious. I am angry at the state of the world that has been left to my generation. Currently, the Supreme Court is poised to strip people with uteruses of their constitutional right to an abortion. And you know what? You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna fight back.
I'm a student and I am so happy that we're in this fight together. What is happening right now is a stripping of autonomy. It is dehumanizing and frankly, it is terrifying. Yes. Today we are here because we fundamentally understand something. Congress has let us down. The Republican Party has let us down. The Democrats have let us down. No one seems to understand the weight that these Supreme Court decisions genuinely hold. Texas, Oklahoma, Idaho, Arizona, Indiana, South Dakota, Wyoming, Florida. This is an emergency and has been left up to us to fight, to speak up, and to take it to the fucking streets.
Joining this fight for me as a woman was a no-brainer, but a lot of women in our community would beg to differ. They say it's the fault of the woman for not using protection. They say it's the woman's fault for opening her legs in the first place. They say, what does it have to do with us? Abortion rights is a white women's issue. Well, I'm here today bringing you history, statistics, and a call to act. The statistics behind sexual assault and unwanted sexual coercion in black women of middle class and poor communities sits at an alarming and uncomfortably high percentage. 1 in 4 black girls will be sexually abused before the age of 18. 1 in 5 black women are survivors of sexual assault. The institutional pattern of rape in black women was well established before the newly enslaved Africans reached the Americas. During the transatlantic voyage, crew members routinely raped and impregnated black women. In preparation for sale, enslaved women were stripped naked and placed on auction blocks. African American women's economic value was dependent upon their ability to reproduce healthy offspring, which could be sold to increase the slave owner's wealth. We will not allow the enslavement and repeated use of our bodies as sex objects and incubators as it was in history to be repeated again. We have the opportunity to act now and make a difference right now. Nothing will change if we don't stand up and fight back. It is up to us to continue that fight so we can ensure a better present and future for ourselves, our children, our children's children. If you don't want kids, your nephews, your nieces, your cousins, let's get together and get in the streets right now. Fuck the court and the legislature. Women are not incubators. Fuck the court and the legislature. Women are not incubators.
My name is Anna, and I'm 16 years old. And I fucking hate that the Supreme Court wants to decimate Roe versus Wade. We need everyone to understand that when an abortion is illegal, women die. Women should be able to do what they want with their bodies. The United States should look like the people in Latin America who raised the green in mass numbers, creating a green wave. When I saw this image, this one, of the countless number of people in places like Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, I thought it was the most beautiful image I have ever seen. And I want the U.S. to look the same.
And we can do this because we have right on our side. We are standing for the interests of millions and millions of women and girls, whether they know it yet or not. And we can do this because there is a suppressed fury, a rage that is deep in the hearts of women across this country and around this world, at thousands and thousands of years of patriarchal chains, of brutality and control, of enslavement and shame. And there is a fury that can be woken up and aroused as these chains of oppression are being tightened yet again. But that will not be woken up if we don't go out and mobilize it and act on our fury and act with courage and put it on the line, and that is what we must do.
And if you think the pill will save us, it won't. Because the abortion refugees from Texas who went to Oklahoma in droves are now stopped in Oklahoma because they just passed the most draconian ban possible. So now what we're looking at is a world where women are going to be second-class citizens, if anything. They will not have control over their reproduction, and they will be forced into unwanted motherhood. And I say that's a form of slavery.
When the news broke that the Supreme Court was allowing Texas to maintain a near total ban on abortion, and hear the case of Dobbs v. Jackson that explicitly asks for the overturn of Roe versus Wade, the initiators of Rise Up for Abortion Rights were disheartened to learn that the leaders of the pro-choice movement decided that their strategy was to sit down, be quiet, and prepare for a post-Roe world. So donate to abortion funds and spread the word about the abortion pill. A strategy that is not only being blocked by stricter bans that seek to criminalize women who cross state lines for an abortion and seeks to end the distribution of the pill, but allows on a federal level politicians the right to deny women's humanity, reducing them down to subhuman incubators with no rights to their own bodies and no say in who gets to use their parts. This is female enslavement that has been allowed by our silence.
No more shame, no more silence, forced motherhood is fascist violence.
This movement of Christian fascists that want to govern society according to their interpretation of the Bible, this movement has never been about babies. It has always been about controlling women, their sexuality, their aspirations, their minds, and their bodies. That is what this movement is about.
carrying a sign. You're carrying a sign that says the future. Yes.
It's her choice.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the future is anti-abortion.
Okay, it's her body, her choice.
Oh yeah.
I did buy me a grand. I had an abortion and I'm proud.
Here in LA, people brought their friends, their neighbors, and their kids. I interviewed some of them. People spoke to what compelled them to come.
As a non-binary person, I believe it's important for access to abortion for everyone. Without shame, without silence.
Why is this important?
Well, I myself had an abortion, so it is very important to me because if I didn't have the right circumstances to to be a mother, so it really saved my life in many ways. So I just wish these same rights for every other woman in the world.
Why are you out here?
I'm here because I want to get rid of the stigma of abortion, and I believe that it's a woman's right, not the government, and to decide what to do with their bodies. And I'm here for my kids and the other women around me.
So again, this is Pete on the Street. This was my report. See you in the streets.
Abortion is a human right. Abortion is a human right.
Next up, a brief report on the movement Scientist Rebellion. Our coverage is based on an article on revcom.us where you will find an insightful interview with a scientist who speaks about the significance of this movement. On April 6, over 1,000 scientists and others in more than 25 countries across the world engaged in coordinated acts of nonviolent civil disobedience, demanding rapid reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, which are fueling the climate crisis that threatens the very existence of humanity and much of the world's species and ecosystems. Organizers say this is the largest campaign of civil disobedience by scientists in history. In Madrid, Spain, they threw red paint on the walls and steps of the Parliament building to represent for all those who have died or will die as a result of the climate crisis. In Germany, scientists blocked a bridge near the German Parliament building, some literally gluing themselves to the pavement before getting arrested. And here in the US, several people chained themselves to the fence of Biden's White House. In the interview on our website, revcom.us, a scientist who took part in these actions talked about overcoming, quote, the idea that scientists should remain neutral in all things, end quote. She spoke of how she used to believe that, but has now come to see the need for scientists, quote, to be expressing what they know and how they're feeling about it. She said scientists have written report after report that detail, quote, the end of the world in the most boring way possible, end quote. She goes on to say it's solid science, end quote, but because it's written in this boring, neutral language, she commented that, quote, you can't tell that we're talking about the potential end to the habitability of major systems on our planet. It just doesn't come through, end quote. To remedy this, she said, quote, people need to see scientists in the streets freaking out so that they know this is real. We're not making it up, end quote. And NASA climate scientist Peter Kalmus was quoted in the press saying, quote, we've been trying to warn you guys for so many decades that we're heading towards a fucking catastrophe, and we've been being ignored. The scientists of the world are being ignored, and it's got to stop. We're not joking, we're not lying, and we're not exaggerating, end quote. The fact that climate scientists are making this call and taking this stand is an extremely important and heroic example. Those with a deeply scientific understanding of climate change are putting themselves on the line and sounding the alarm. Many more people in many professions need to follow their example and do the same. Our article this week on revcom.us made this important summation. We are in the midst of a climate emergency, and we are running out of time. While the world's governments and the capitalist system that they serve is moving precisely in the wrong direction, continuing to release profligate amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere with devastating impacts on humanity and the planet. Without hyperbole, we can say that billions of lives currently hang in the balance. This is fundamentally a problem of the capitalist imperialist system, and we need a revolution and a new society for any real and lasting solutions. While this is not what Scientist Rebellion is explicitly calling for, what they are doing is very important and potentially significant, a part of sounding the alarm to let the world know what is at stake. So that brings us to the end of our 97th episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. But before we go, two things. First, I want to bring your attention to a very important interview, a very substantive interview with Bob Avakian on our website, revcom.us. In this interview, where Bob Avakian speaks to a wide range of questions, he says in the introduction to this that the answers to these questions are, on the one hand, simple and basic, and on the other hand, complex. Simple and basic in the sense that the problems involved can be solved, and can only be solved with a revolution and a radically different system, a socialist system aiming for the final goal of a communist world. And complex in that actually making this revolution and then achieving the transformations that this radically new system will make possible will require working and struggling through some difficult and at times intense contradictions. In this interview, Bob Avakian gives a lot of attention to and draws from the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America, which he authored. He says in this introduction that the Constitution was written with the future in mind, as a guiding set of objectives, principles, and concrete provisions for a socialist society brought into being through the overthrow of the capitalist imperialist system that now rules this country and dominates the world as a whole. End quote. I think you got a sense of that through this show, but this interview is something else and on a whole other level. So I really want to commend to you to start reading it. It's going to be done serialized over the next several weeks, but you can also read the whole interview on the website now. And I said I had 2 points. The second point is this. This is the 97th episode. In a few weeks, we will be at our 100th episode. And there's a tremendous gap between the information, between the analysis, and the program that we bring for this radically new world to be achieved through a real revolution in this country. There's nothing else like this show on the internet. So on our 100th show, we're going to be calling on you to help us to grow the audience for the show, because there's a huge gap between that content and the number of people who watch this program every week. We appreciate tremendously the hundreds who watch us regularly and the thousands who have seen it. But this needs to move quickly to many thousands and then to tens of thousands. We need to know how to do this. We need to know what you think about this show. You can DM us. You can write us at therevcoms@gmail.com. If you're in New York or Boston or Chicago or LA or the Bay Area, any place you know a Revcom, talk to them about the show. Your ideas for how it can be spread, how more people can be drawn to watch it. Also on our next show, we're going to be talking about involving people and becoming part of the crew in different cities around the country. People who have a desire to, and even ability and even training in writing, in graphic arts, in filming, and in editing. So we want to hear from you as soon as possible so we can plan our 100th episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. And for now, we urge you to financially support the show and become a patron. So with that, I'm going to say good night for the crew and for Sansaro, who's hard at work in New York City. And we'll see you next Thursday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time and 8 p.m. New York time on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show.